I'm Greg Hoffman. We moved to the Hill when I was 13, as I recall. This was 1966. And my first memory of the Hellers was, as I recall, there's lots of memories, but it was a winter time. And Larry came putzing down Eagle Rock Road in what I believe was a 48 Willys with a snowplow on the front of this thing. You can barely get out of its own way. And he had this French driving hat on in the middle of a snowstorm and came down our driveway and tried to open up our driveway for us, and they did more damage than he did help. That was my first introduction and memory of Larry. And actually, Dot, my first memory of hers, and I think my brothers would probably agree with me, this picture here I've always admired, because it looks a lot like Dottie as I remember her when we moved here. Really well done. Yeah. But for us kids, it was kind of scary. She was a beautiful woman, but I think she was kind of intimidating to us little guys initially until we got to know her. And that might have been driven a little bit by some of what my brother can share in terms of the golf ball incident.
Golf ball incident.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Brent.
Yeah.
Is that a lead in to my story? So, yep, younger brother, Dave, and I was 6 years old when we moved up here. And first, it was such a blessing to grow up here as a child. I think there's a lot of us in here can appreciate the games we used to play, kick the can, capture the flag. It was just the freedom up here that we had was just phenomenal. And as far as the golf ball incident, I can also remember Larry plowing around in his Jeep, and man, I just can remember him being real crazy of the way he would drive that and clear the roads out, but he loved what he was doing.
Yes, he did.
And but Larry had a nice golf range down here where he'd go out and hit his golf balls, and it was really laid out nice. But as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and brothers and friends in the neighborhood, that was a great place for us to go get golf balls. These are out in the field, they're in a basket.
Free.
Yeah, they're free. And so I was just walking around here today because I haven't really spent a lot of time in the house because, as Greg was saying, it was we were fearful of this place. Basically, they were down in the canyon, and it was a scary road to get down here. And so, it was kind of like stay away from the house. Basically, that was my vision then. But anyway, we'd go down there and we'd get these free golf balls. And there was one time that we heard a shotgun go off, and we went running. So we kind of learned pretty quick that those were not free golf balls. But it was fun, and just another.
He got his point across.
Yeah, and just another story around that. As far as this golf ball range, there was another time we were down there playing around, and we came across a rattlesnake. And Larry saw us down there walking around and probably scared. Well, he came down and actually took the head of that rattlesnake off with one of his golf clubs. And we carried the snake home and skinned it out. But that was a pretty nice little pitching wedge shot. I saw it live, he did it. But it was pretty good. Great memories of Larry, and great memories up here on the hill.
Okay.
So move that way. Anybody else?
You probably didn't know Larry.
Well, I'll pitch in here.
Here we go.
First of all, thank you, Pam and the university, for honoring Larry and Dottie. They're part of what we have enjoyed for 49 years living up on the hill. This valley hasn't changed in our lifetime, and we are so thankful for Dottie and Heller and Larry doing what they did. She had plenty of opportunities to sell this property. I can remember at one time, and we shared a lot of just intimate times with Larry and Dottie. But she even had, can't remember his name, he would have been the conductor of then the Colorado Springs Symphony. Now it's the Philharmonic. But Charles something.
Ansbacher.
Right.
Ansbacher.
And he wanted to buy this property. but she still just wanted to make sure that it was going to be their peaceful valley, their Yon Valley, and just keep it for, I think, a gift to her husband more than anything. With what you have done here with this property, it's just a gift to certainly the community, but a special gift to all of the neighbors that have lived here through all these years. But I've got lots of memories, and I will share a few of them. I know Larry and Dottie enjoyed happy hour. When we first moved here, we never even knew what a happy hour was. Seriously, I mean, I enjoy it now. But we came here from Ohio, and maybe once a year we'd have a champagne toast in New Year's. And then certainly some of my family lived here, so we knew that the happy hour was a good time to have camaraderie with family and friends. But Larry and Dottie allowed us to share that time with them with happy hours through the years, and it went on even after Larry passed, and Dottie would call us and say, hey, it's happy hour, Larry, you're fixing them. And then even when she got older, she'd call us and come up in her little Volkswagen that a front seat was taken out because she had room there for, I guess, her grocery bags and she was always packing.
Yeah.
But she'd come up when she was late in years and said, well, I can't have the gin anymore, but I just want to have the happy hour.
Get the tonic.
I'll pass this on to someone else, but if we go around and want to share any other.
Did you introduce yourself? Did you say your name for the
No, I didn't. Pat Hoffman, the mother and the wife, these three good-looking men.
The golf ball stealer.
That's all right.
And my beautiful daughters, Greg's wife Mary and Dave's wife Kim. And by the way, she's a concert pianist, so don't show her that. Don't show her that style.
Can I talk now?
Yes?
Yes, honey.
Anyway, I'm Larry Hoffman, the king of the hill. Anyway, knew Dottie awful well, Larry too. But I can remember Dottie called one day, and she says, I answered the phone, she says, Larry, I need your help. So I says, what can I do for you, Dottie? She says, come down. I fell, walking out of the kitchen. So I come down here in a hurry, went to the back sliding glass door, couldn't open it, it was locked. So Dottie was scooting across the floor on her rump, this. And she come up to her and says, it's around there on the rocks. The fifth rock back, lift it up, there's a key there. So didn't take me long to get over there, open the door and come in, and she had the phone ready to go. So I walked over to the phone, called emergency. I don't think I called 911 or 911. I think it was her doctor.
I think she had her doctor's phone number for you to call.
That's what it was. Well, it wasn't too long, and they were out here, two girls, an ambulance, and boy, they did a super job. This woman, that's one of them. I'll pass it on to someone else. You want me to keep talking? There's another time when I had a snowstorm here, and Dottie she had a Volkswagen, she ran up the driveway, and got up on top of them, got stuck in the snow. So I got called again. And went down and put a chain around the front bumper, and Dottie got in the car, and I started pulling, I heard a creak in the crack. Couldn't move her, and here was a bumper like this. I didn't have brains enough to hook it under the one phone.
They had a space under there that you could hook on.
I know. But anyway, I ended up buying a new bumper and I don't know who put it on.
So tell what she called you the next day.
Oh, yeah. She called next day, she says, Larry, you know what? I'm getting better mileage on this car now. That was Dottie.
Something good came out of it.
She was a winner, so was Larry.
Well, I have another memory of Larry. We used to play ping pong, and I think it was up in the greenhouse.
Yeah, the greenhouse.
And one time Larry had injured himself, and he didn't want to play. So I think you and Dottie played together,
Yeah.
and then I played the next game with Dottie, and Larry saw how I played ping pong, so he said, I think I can play that.
Even injured it.
Injured.
How did you do? Did you do good?
Oh, heck, he probably beat me.
He's pretty good.
I was good at
Yeah.
tennis, but I wasn't that fast with ping pong.
Where was the ping pong table?
I think it was up in the biggest room,
In the
in
greenhouse.
They
wasn't
walked in the door and the cabin was off to the right.
Must still
And certainly another memory that I will never forget, it's burned in my heart forever. They had built the gallery down here with the help of Phyllis and Bill Riley. Phyllis and Bill were there. I can still see them even putting the roof on that, if I'm not wrong, Kathy. But after Larry had passed, and then the gallery down there was full of his beautiful artwork. And they had a bench in there. As I recall, it might still be down there outside, or maybe it's inside, I don't know. But they always played music in there, 24/7, all the time. I think it was KCME, my favorite channel. I know that Larry and Dottie enjoyed that. And it was one summer morning, I had family here from Arizona. My sister and I, we were out in our sunroom, and Larry and her husband were playing golf, and Dottie called me and she said, Pat, I've just been ruined. I said, Dottie, what's going on? And she said, somebody broke into the gallery. And she said, I came home and she came right up past it with her little Volkswagen. And she said, I saw somebody sitting in there, and he ran out, he broke into one of the sliding doors. And he ran out and he was stark naked. And she said, I chased him as far as I could up into the bluffs in my Volkswagen. And she said, I'm home now, and I've got the house locked, but I've called the police, so if you just want to go out to the end of your driveway and make sure they get down here. They know where I am. And I said, well, Dottie, do you want me to come down now? And she said, if you would, please. And so I got in my little Cougar and I told my sister, I said, lock up the house, all the doors, there's somebody crazy up in the bluffs. So I got down here and I pulled down the driveway and was coming up. And Larry used to have
And,
was it a water pump?
yeah.
Down there someplace away from the house, but close enough to the road. And it looked like there was a person there. I didn't realize at the time that this guy was naked. And he had his French coat on that pump, and it looked like a real person to me. And my imagination, you don't have to do much with it. And I got up here and pulled my Cougar up, and the police weren't here yet, and the water was running just right outside where the spigot was. And Dottie had the house locked, but she knew that it was me, so she came out. And she was still packing. She had her gun in her hand. And because we know the history, was a police officer, the first policewoman in Colorado Springs. And I don't know if she dealt with guns then, but she did a real service to women that needed help. Anyhow, forward, police got here, and I'm standing out there with Dottie, and they come up and start talking to her, and she still had her gun in her hand, and I'm right there next to Dottie. She's telling this guy is up in the valley up there someplace, stark naked, barefoot. So the police officer said, well, do you have a blanket or something for us to take up there? And she said, he doesn't have anything to show. So, but then at the end of the day, this woman, she was just a steel woman. And if you look at all of her hats out there, you will see how versatile she was in her lifestyle. You wouldn't expect a little peach-colored hat with feathers on it. That's the time that in Dottie's life I didn't know her. But at the end of the day then, my sister and brother-in-law was at the house, and she called us and she said, why don't you all come down for happy hour? And we did. We sat right out there, and here is everything all broken into. Of course, the police have already taken care of everything there, but she just was an incredible woman. And I just loved her. She was just like family.
Well, I'll mention one. I'm Bill Applin. We moved up here on the hill in '64. I was about 4 or 5, about 4, I guess. And obviously, my recollections were during the youthful time when, like David over there stealing golf balls, and we would always do the most appropriate things.
I believe you were with me, Bill.
I was not. That was Jimmy Riley with you. And your brother. But it was real interesting driving in here. You drive in and you just kind of get a rush of emotions after, because I've been down in this property probably 35, 40 years, and you just, all of a sudden stuff rushes back, whether it's Pulpit Rock up there hiking around and, Larry saying to go get, rattlesnake for dinner tonight, and they would, and stuff like that. But just that stuff you just think about like that. But a couple of times, like I said, in our youth, we would do things that probably weren't the smartest. And I remember specifically a couple of different times, and very, very much like Dave, the hellers down here. As a kid, you're like, oh, they're the ones down in the valley down there, and not that we would avoid, but we just were cautious in many ways of that, because as a kid you weren't quite sure. And a couple different times we as boys wanted to set out and camp overnight. So I remember a couple of different times when actually it was Jimmy and Eddie, and we convened kind of at our junction up there between the three houses, and we were going to camp back here. For whatever reason, we'd like to camp back here versus on our side. We'd like to camp back behind Larry and Dot back there. So we start kind of walking down, which is the entrance way, and it's trespassing. No trespassing sign is right there. And we'd always go around that, and I remember Eddie specifically going, I don't think we should walk down the driveway. And I said, it's fine, we can walk down the driveway, we'll veer off up the creek, which is the dry riverbed. And he'll never see us, he being Larry. So sure enough, we go down, we got our packs on or whatever, and we kind of veer up that thing, and I hear this, hey! Hey boys! And we're kind of like looking at each other like, did you hear that? And also did you hear that? And hey, I'm up here. He goes, it's okay if you go camping back there, but just don't burn the whole neighborhood down, I remember him saying that. I'm like, no, we're okay. And he goes, I know where you're camping. So we're like, oh, great. So we'd go off and we'd camp, and we wouldn't burn the neighborhood down. And then I remember specifically another time, we set out on a camping trip, and Eddie goes, let's not go that way, let's go this way so Larry doesn't see us. So we come around the property this way. Hey! I remember Larry said, I see you boys. I'm like, oh gosh. And I remember, I don't know who it was, so he said, we're not going to burn the property down. So it was always funny, we're always kind of like dodging and weaving. But I remember also in one of those, or is either camping or whatever, where Dot invited us in for lemonade. She made lemonade. She goes, "Why don't you boys come in?" And we're like, "Oh gosh, it's been a long hike back. We got to get all the way over to Hoffman's house. So we got a long way still to go. We better pit stop and have our lemonade here." But we did, and she invited us in, and you get a different perspective. I got a totally different perspective of both Larry and Dot on that little lemonade stop. I remember that time, and she showed us some of the artwork and that, and it's amazing, even as a kid, remember, I don't know how old we were then, 10, 11, 12 probably at that point, but just some different perspectives as what we set out. But always a neat place, and like David said, I mean, living here was just, extra special as a child. There's nothing like it. I mean, it's just, at the time you didn't even know it, you took it for granted, but then I remember as you go out and venture out and start your own families, I always remember I was trying to find a kind of a slice of the hill, whether it be a little acreage or that, and I was kind of, man, neighbors are like, and it was just kind of, so, but just real special. It was just a special place that you can't replicate, never can, never will, so, anyway, those are some of
That's
those.
good, Bill, yep.
Did you have somebody over there to say something?
I don't know, we're like a lot about what happened there.
Yeah, you guys are gonna learn a lot about what went on there.
Oh, yeah, where's Eddie at? He said, no.
I've got one story. This was when Dot was, when she was a few years before she passed. And she was actually on assignment. My boss, who was the chancellor at the time, her name is Linda Bennell Shade, she asked me to just look in on her and see how she was and so forth. And so I did, and Dot says, "I don't like your boss." She goes, "I don't like her at all." For some reason, they had a personality conflict. Don't ask me why, but anyway, I would come and visit her, and eventually we really hit it off. And she told me all these stories, it's ones that you told. She told me all of the stories, and I took her to Walgreens, and I'd run errands with her, and I would come 2 or 3 times a week. I really got very, very attached to her. I mean, she's just such a wonderful person. But she said, "I know what the university wants. I know they want my property. They want all this. I'm not sure I'm going to give it to them, but I know what they want." And she would always talk about that. But anyway, we hit it off, and then she calls me one day, and do you guys remember John Bennett? That was her lawyer.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Bennett did.
Yeah, and so she goes, "Kathy," she goes, "I need you to come over tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I said, "Okay." She goes, "I'm signing the deed. I'm signing the deed of my house over and the property over to the university. I don't want the chancellor here, I want you here." And so I did. I came over, and it was a very special moment for me to be able to be part of that. But she was funny about people. She either liked you or she didn't. I'm sure you guys all know that. And the sad part is that, remember when she moved from here and she moved to their other property, that other little house, that really weird house? Do you remember that one where it was big, long, and there was stuff in the middle? And it was like a U shape?
Oh, yeah.
Can't remember where it was.
Oh, yeah, we spent many times there with
Yeah,
them.
and she moved there at the end, remember?
Where was that?
Well, I can't
Right
remember.
across from our driveway into our home,
Newman's,
right up on
Newman's
the
old
Eagle
house.
Newman's.
Yeah, greenhouse.
Oh, in the middle.
There was a
She
greenhouse
moved
in
from here,
one.
she moved from the guest house, and then she moved down there.
Yeah,
And I really saw her
That's
a
where it
lot,
was.
even after she signed the deed, I was always over there. My husband and I had gone to Europe for a vacation, and I got back, first thing I did was call her, no answer. No answer, and then I called Bill Riley, and he told me she had passed. I was so sad. My husband will say, "I don't ever cry." I was so sad because I didn't get to say goodbye,
I remember she used to talk about you so much. I don't know that I could have met you. And when I was trying to put things together in my head, I went through because I've got 2 drawers of UCCS. One of them's called encroachment. I'm joking. But I have saved every newspaper article and everything through the years with all of this. And, you know the treasure that we have here. And we are very pleased with Larry and I especially because of our flag lot. We haven't seen the encroachment like a lot of the neighborhood has. But I was looking for your name through all of that, and I didn't remember your name. And I'm so glad now that I know that you're here and you're part of this, because you meant so much to Dottie.
Well, I mean, I just helped her at the end. I got to know her at the very end, but I heard all the stories. I mean, hours of stories that really were fabulous. I wish I could remember them all. I mean, they were some great stories. You know, all the way back, all the way back when she was a police officer, and helping the rape
Yeah.
victims.
Yeah,
I
she
mean, she was
was
just
the early
amazing.
ones.
I wish, the one thing I wish is we could have got her oral history. But we weren't savvy like Pam is. If we would have been smart, we would have got her oral history. But, we don't think about that stuff, so.
Well, I have a couple. I think, well, I'm Kathy Roundtree, Riley. And I think probably the first time I remember Larry is Mom and Dad had a lot of New Year's Eve parties up there, had some big parties, and they had some friends by the name of Riley's. And he played the piano, and I remember Larry was always there with the trombone. So they were always singing Christmas music, and Mr. Jim Riley. Yeah, and he's playing the trombone, and he was over at the house a lot. Well, they both were over there a lot. And I remember when Dad built the barn over there, he was telling Dad just how he should build it. It needed to be just like this, and Dad was like, oh, I got it. And so he'd sit over here with the binoculars, and he found some mistakes, and he'd come over and tell him, you goofed up here, you goofed up there, and so on. And I remember that I did a lot of arts and crafts with Dot. She had a room downstairs, and that's where she did all her arts and crafts and so on. And then Cindy was telling me that one of his horses stepped on a rake and impaled itself. And he just looked at the horse and decided to come in and have a big drink and called the vet. that took care of it, yeah. But he was always calling, finding out what his kids were doing. Were we going roller skating? He went roller skating with us a lot. And
how old were you then when he was doing stuff like that?
ooh, oh, we were all really young.
Yeah.
They got their property from the Hellers
Uh-huh.
in 58, so starting at 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting. Everything you've said is stuff I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing for the first time.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's neat.
They were something. They were always at the house Christmas and Thanksgiving, I mean, they kind of, I don't know, we weren't scared of this house. We were over here all the time,
Yeah, you weren't
in
burning
the
the place
basement.
down.
The basement was kind of a scary place, but,
We were stealing golf balls.
and we were stealing golf balls.
He knew the boys were the
Larry.
ones to watch out for. He knew the boys.
Yeah.
Girls, you're okay. Boys.
And he liked, he did a portrait of Cindy. Yeah, and it's in, I think that picture out there, he painted her into that picture out there. And
That was a beauty.
yeah, so then, she decided she was in do bow and arrow stuff, and so he started researching how to make all the arrows, and so on, and he was getting all excited about making arrows for her and so on, and then he found out they only cost 23 cents. So he never did. And they had a player piano. Do you remember they had a player piano over in that corner? And
I remember
and
that.
yeah,
I remember that.
yeah, we used to sit there with it and have so much fun. Yeah, they were really something.
Oh, you really were their family for so many years.
They were.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know really my grandparents. I sort of knew a grandfather. So these guys kind of became that. And I don't know, we just running around a
telling you. We just look guilty.
He knew you weren't gonna burn the place down.
Bill, Ruskin, why don't you tell your story about how she gave you all the stuff?
Well, I wonder if this gentleman would want
Yeah.
to say
Yeah,
something
you got it.
first.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
we'd like to that,
Very good.
about it.
My name is Dick Apland, and as it turned out, we were friends of the Rileys long ago in the 50s, when, and Bill kept saying, you ought to move up in this hill. We were living down below Craigmore there, and of course Larry wouldn't sell any land to anybody. In those days, there was just nothing. Well, Bill, your dad finally talked him into it, and see, he wanted somebody kind of artsy, because up here was known kind of as an artsy area. There were artists up kind of, and he was an artist, and I have no talent. I can't draw a straight line. And so we didn't really tell him about that. We just, Bill just kind of glossed over that. And as long as we had enough land so that we could have a horse or something, that was fine. So we built up here in the, what?
64.
64. We built up here in 1964. And primarily, we never, I really didn't know Dot and Larry then, other than signatures on legal documents, because they had to get a road through, Eagle Rock Circle had to go through, and of course that had to go through the city, and they kind of finagled things to get that thing through, and then we built up here in the 60s, 64. 64, I think. We built up here, and then we met Larry and Dot, just off and on. We were more friends with the Rileys, but we did get down here, and of course, I saw the golf clubs that he had. Now, he has some reconstructed golf clubs, not reconstructed, they were refurbished, right? Over here of his, the old wood shafts and everything, and of course, that's what he used to go out here and hit with those old wooden shaft clubs, which, nobody sees a wooden shaft club anymore. But, and I was always interested in his cars, but I always wanted to buy a piece of his bronze work. And like he gave one, your folks bought one, and I just love that, and I like the one about being an old history teacher, or the one about the war, the French War, I think it was, where he researched everything, what they wore for gun belts, what they wore for everything. I mean, he knew it down to a gnat's eye, what they wore, and it just amazed me that anyone would go to that trouble. But he would always say, Dick, you really can't afford this stuff. And we never did, by God. We never did, but we used to come down and visit, and we were never real close to Dot, were we, Gene?
No,
No, we were never real close to Dot, but
maybe
Larry,
she didn't like us.
That's because there's someone in the backyard burning the place down.
yeah, she thought that we had kids that were gonna burn the place down.
down and you weren't artsy, so.
But we did enjoy their company, and on many occasions, the little car that he had, that we'd crank up and to get going, and it was always kind of fun to see that car running, because it was ancient. I forgot what year was that, Larry, do you remember?
1950.
50? It was a 50. Of course, it wasn't so ancient in those days, but it's turned ancient, but he had that car, and he'd rebuild the engine periodically, and see him driving up. One time I remember I was there, and Dot got out and I got in so he could drive him and down the road, and but that was always fun. But anyway, that's how we got our land from the Hellers. We got 2.5 acres over there, and we enjoyed it. And like you say, the kids with growing up, and just nowadays the way children are so confined to a lot, and mother watching them while they go out and play, and we used to send them out, say come home by dark.
Yep.
That was our life, and we loved it.
Amen.
Actually, we had a family in on Saturday, 4th, Greg's family, and a couple of grandsons, David and Kim's son, 28, and Ed is not here tonight, his son,
Yeah.
Lucas, 27. Those guys took off because they have so many memories of this valley.
Yeah.
And they were gone for 2 hours. just like you said, when our kids were little, all Larry had to do was whistle. They were up here in the valley someplace, they were in a safe place. But those guys came back, just, they had so many wonderful
Yeah.
memories. Went to the fort that they had built, how many, Bill, you were
Oh,
probably
gosh.
part of that.
Hundreds of
Too,
times.
but here are grandsons that are 27 and 28.
Amazing.
But there is a treasure here for,
Yep.
for all of our family.
All our life. Well, I remember the girls walking up to a gravel road, Bonnie and
Kitty?
Kitty, and, you know, I grabbed her up to the fields and nobody thought anything about it.
To get your bus, you had to
Yeah,
walk.
you had
Yeah, you had to walk to get to your
Walk
bus.
a mile uphill both ways.
In 6
Get
years.
by
Five,
this
10
now.
6 feet slow.
All
get a bus.
uphill, all uphill.
Yeah, uphill both ways, that's what we said.
Well, I used to walk the kids to school and I got down to a size 10.
It was
And
out in the
now, you
country.
know what that,
Over-
maybe
over
Gene
Bates,
and
right?
Dick, you're not aware, but I know the rest of the neighborhood is, that the Bates Elementary School has now been sold to a, I
No.
think, a Chicago land development, and will be
Oh, really?
turned into an
I
off-site
didn't know.
campus, housing for the students.
Oh, no. I did not know that.
Did not know that. Bates.
Our students, we don't agree to that, but we only say.
But it's not part of the
No,
university.
it is not part of the
It's a
university.
private,
We were not happy about it, but it is private land. We can't stop
Yeah.
Right.
the city,
Yeah.
School District 11, from selling it. We were not.
I didn't know that. Did you know that? So,
Have all the lifelong friends of Dorothy and the Hellers had a chance? Because I came in later on, but I want to make sure all of you have had.
I should probably say something.
yeah, Kitty should.
Okay, so I was a little older than people perpetrating golf ball. And actually, my conversation with Larry and Dot was usually of the nature of, may I have permission to ride my horse through your property? And, cause I lived, well, and I do again, at 4785 Stanton Road, which is the first house on the right on the way down the hill from the garage. And by the way, when I graduated from high school in 1969, that was still 7 Eagle Rock Road. Don't ask me how, but that was the address on that place still then.
Never knew that.
But I had a horse, my dad had retired from the Air Force and we had stopped moving all over the United States the year before. And we moved in here in 1964 when I was starting the 8th grade. And I had been saving for a horse for 8 years, and my reward was to, once we stopped moving, the carrot that was dangled in front of me for 8 years was, when we stop moving, you can have a horse. So I got this monster big horse that some of the people in the room here got rides on, and we all enjoyed him. But I really wanted to ride through this land because it was special, and one of you guys said something about back in there, and back in there was exactly where I wanted to go because it was sort of mysterious and it was really wild. And if you could get up the bluff and over the bluff, then Academy was like 2 lanes or something like that. Academy was nothing. So you could ride, you could cross that, and then if you had permission from the Prings, you could ride across the Pring land and you could be gone all day. And I did that a few times. And now I would just be, I don't think I'd have the guts enough to do it. Then it's like I never even thought about it. I wanted to do that so bad. And, but so the thing with, I had to get permission. So my mother took me to Dr. Tremblay and to Larry and Dot, and we had tea or whatever we were drinking in those days. and I asked the question, and it all hinged on whether or not I would close the gate that said no trespassing. And,
We're supposed to close it.
and so, yeah, cause I remember that sign, and so, and then I was kind of shy, and so Larry took me around and kind of showed me his paintings, showed me some furniture he'd made, and that was kind of my one conversation with Larry. My brother Chris, who's 3 years older, did some welding stuff with Larry later on. And Chris isn't here, he's in Dallas. But, so the, and I came back a few more times with my mother. I stopped in a couple of times when I'd be riding by and, the had lemonade. I didn't know they had a basement. That's really cool. You did that
creepy.
stuff. But so
That's creepy.
so basically, my whole recollection of those guys was that they were sort of enabling my huge horse habit at the time, and they were very gracious. And I know my mother played golf with Dot a little bit. I just saw a golf scorecard the other day, which was kind of cool, so I'll probably keep that. But basically I left and missed a lot, but I have never forgotten how special this land is. So when I came back a couple of years ago to help my mother before she passed away, and came to the first picnic, neighborhood picnic, which you all are gracious enough to let us have here, I just felt like I was home. I just enjoyed it so very much. So that's all I have to say, but it is fun seeing everybody again and the people I recognize or who recognized me. And I really hadn't seen Bonnie Applin since 1969 when I graduated from Boston. And I used to babysit the Riley children. So I just, it's really fun to see you guys. So thank you very much. And thanks to the university for, I think, caring for the land at a level that I did not expect. And it's in, if you guys haven't seen the 50th anniversary book, I bought it in the bookstore. It's worth having, because it tells you a lot about this land from way before Larry and Dot were here. Way before the city was settled even. So it's, it is special, and a lot of it, I think we're lucky here. I've just spent 17 years in DC, and there are people who try everywhere, but there's a pretty big piece of really special land here, and I like the way it's growing and being preserved, and same way with Dr. Tremblay's place. So good job.
She's referencing something I want all of you to know about. In honor of our 50th anniversary, we commissioned, with about 34 of our faculty and staff, a field guide of the property. And so that includes all of this. And in fact, it was, inspired by what we're trying to do with the Heller and the adjacent Tremblay property. Because that is exactly what Dot Heller wanted. And she put deed restrictions that are very appropriate on this property. But the choice between it being a chancellor's home and a place where everyone can come, I think for the community, the everyone can come is the better answer. But in this whole acreage that they owned, it can only have 20% more square footage in buildings than it does now. So it will be essentially the same. There are times when we need more bathrooms. I mean, to be candid about this. You know, when you have an outdoor gathering of 150 people, it's a bit challenging. So there are things that will change, but not fundamentally. And I think that's in honoring the property. The field guide is on the internet, it's on sale in the bookstore, but it's the property and it goes back over 2,000 years in terms of the archaeology that has been found in the property, plus the Heller Center. So you might have an interest, and it's also in the library if you want to check it out. But it really talks about this whole piece, the whole property, including the sanatorium and everything. But this property is very much a centerpiece of that particular book. So thank you for remembering to say something about it. How about over here? We haven't heard anything over here.
Dick, you must have something to say.
I'm a latecomer. We are latecomers. My wife and I came here in the 80s, early 80s. The first contact I had with the Hellers, I drove up. My brother lived, Don, who isn't here today, he moved up here in the 60s and built. I saw the property that he lived in and I thought it was great. So we decided we'd like to buy up here. Came up and talked to Larry Heller. And the first acquaintance I had with him was, no, we're not interested in selling. And he said, well, there may be other people who are interested, but we're not. And I saw Dot walk across from the little cottage that they
Guest
called
house.
it, to the house. That was the first I ever saw of her. Didn't say a word, just did her walk, that was it. And she probably, I met and respected more than Larry because I didn't even know Larry. He died shortly after we moved here in the early 80s. So most of our contact was with Dot herself. She never talked about being a policewoman. She never talked about anyone. She had her person that she picked for this. She had her person she picked for that. She had Pat
Well, you
and
know,
Larry.
I'm gonna interrupt here because
Go ahead.
you brought this to my memory. Because she always told me, she said, I love to work the neighborhood.
She did. Well, just as a typical example, she'd asked me to come up and see if I would start her mower. I'd work on it, and not spending an awful lot of time. Finally got it started, and it ran. She eventually gave me the mower. Didn't run worth a darn. Half an hour later, it quit. But anyway, she gave it to me, and I came up and tried mowing a couple of times, and it would quit every half hour. I'd go home, I'd walk back. Half an hour later, it would start. And she said, Larry always had a problem with that machine. Always. Take it back to Sears. They'd have to come back. Same thing. Anyway, I lost my train of thought.
One day she called and said about the mower.
Oh, about the mower. Well, she told me. She said, I always get the mower started with beer.
Right up your alley, huh?
Yeah, I thought that was all right. But I said, how'd you do that? She said, I offer you a beer, you come up.
Hotter the day, the better.
You betcha.
It always worked, right?
But as latecomers, we didn't have too much, like the stories I've heard this evening have been absolutely great. I didn't know those, because we weren't a part of that younger group. But it's
Dick, you were
nice.
part of the art community,
Pardon?
right? Weren't you part of the art
No,
community?
that was my brother Don.
Oh, that's Don, yes.
I'm Jim Green.
But you do know that his nephew, Tony, was my absolute best friend growing up here in the hill. We were the same age.
Wow.
And he was part of the golf ball deal.
I've got something to hang on.
He's got to,
Yeah.
But Dot, we had a couple times she would call. She would call Larry for one thing. She would call Bill Riley for other things. Different people for different situations. She called me one day and said, I've got a snake in the house. And I said, well, Dot, just keep your eye on the snake, I'll be out. And I ran up, or drove up, and drove in, and she had the snake in her kitchen out here in this building. And she said, well, I've just moved the dishwasher. I said, well, it's gotta be in there somewhere. I had my snare and all rigged for her snake. She rolled that darn thing out, and she rolled that snake up on the wheel, killed it dead in the door. She called another day, and there was a snake up in her cottage, and it was up on the side, so we got rid of it. She showed me where it was. She stood outside the window and said, it's right there. And I kept working behind the vines and things she had in the cottage, and we got it out. So it was a fun time for me. It wasn't for Dot, I'm sure.
Well, I am so glad to learn after our discovery when we started to revisit this, that she did not necessarily love snakes. There were 24 rattlesnakes in the basement. When we came in here to start, well, that was a wonderful place because
Nice.
we had not been occupied
Well,
for
right.
a while.
And there were a number of holes in the house too.
Yes, and I am from Oklahoma, and it has taken me years to wear anything other than boots out there.
Should call Larry, you had a Sunday buffet.
By the way, these guys talked about some of the first memories they had. I think that was Greg talking about the first memories they had of Larry driving down the road in his Jeep with the blade on front. It was Little Willie's, gray, red wheels.
Yeah.
I started that down in the garage, the one below his shop, just below this building. And I got it started and tried driving it over the road and plowing the road. She gave that to me early on. It was absolutely great. But it ran, I guess I got about 6 miles per gallon out of it. I couldn't afford to keep it when the gas prices got so darn high.
And she would call and say, my garage door keeps opening up, and she didn't understand why the garage door was opening. Well, she had her opener in her
Pocket.
and she would pat it just to be sure it was there. She was getting garage door. So Jim finally discovered why it was opening.
Little stories like she called one day and said, Jim, can you come up and I've got a problem up here with some guy on the hill. I came up and she said, I drove up real fast and got out of the car. She said, she was standing out in front. And she said, listen to that. Here was some fella up on the hill, up on the bluffs. And he was walking back and forth and blah, 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 blah. And I guess he was acting or showing like he was on a stage. And there was no problem. She just said, listen to that guy. She said, I just wanted somebody to be around in case something happened. I guess Larry or a few of the other people in the area weren't available at that time. But she did pick her people for various reasons. And that's all I can say.
I'm Bill Ruskin, and this is my wife Bridget. We came to Colorado Springs in 1970, and we've had the good fortune through many experiences to just have a wonderful life here in Colorado Springs. And through the Park and Recreation Department, where I worked as superintendent of planning, design, and development for a number of years, I got involved with the Hellers. And also that's the first place I met Pam when she was working on a PhD and came to the Park and Recreation Department to conduct a seminar of some sort. And so I got to know her back in the early days of her career with the university. Martha Mattoon was on the park board, and her husband taught here at the university.
Yes, in the biology department.
Biology.
Yeah, he was a very well-respected biologist from Johns Hopkins.
I see. In my work through planning, design, and development, I've been involved with all the parks in the city, but I've had the good fortune of helping to create some. And a lot of people will never know that, and it's okay. But I have the satisfaction and really the privilege of having been involved with our park system. One day Martha said, Bill, you have to come out and meet Dorothy Heller. And I didn't know Dorothy. She looked, I said, well, tell me about Dorothy. And she told me, and I said, well, that sounds very interesting, because you know that what was the White House Ranch is now the Rockledge Ranch, and it's preserved, and you can go back in time and relive those days in the early 19th, or the mid-19th century and on. I said, well, I'm looking forward to that. So Martha brought me out and met Dorothy, and we took a little tour, and then Dorothy invited me to come back, and the idea was that, well, let me back up a minute. When I entered John Valley, I immediately felt I was going back in time. Just like if you go to the Rockledge Ranch, you get the feeling of going back in time. And I knew in my mind that if there was some way the city could get hold of the property, we could recreate something similar to the Rockledge Ranch of a different period. And over the next couple of months and years, Dorothy and I met, and I would talk to her about it. She was interested, but as Pam pointed out, she was even though she had worked for the city in the police department, she was very skeptical of the city's integrity and leaving the property intact. She had a fear, she told me, of, among other things, eminent domain or whatever, that they would run, the first thing they'd do is build a road from Academy Boulevard down to Nevada. Yeah. That would just be a perfect connection. So the idea of this creating something similar to the Rockledge Ranch appealed to her, and I think Pam confirmed that with discussions. It didn't come about, but we maintained our friendship, and I bring blueberry muffins out to her, and she would have tea or lemonade, maybe both or whatever, and we'd meet up at the guest house. I really like the guest house. I like things like this. It was very natural, and it was just a wonderful place to sit and visit. And we talked about the trees and the forest and the land, and it's just a beautiful setting. So we kind of hit it off. And she took me into the studio. And here you'll see some pictures. I haven't seen them anywhere. The early days when her car was in the studio. I think that's what it's called, the studio, where all the art was. The gallery. Gallery, right. The studio was gone. And that's where Larry had his, I saw the bronze cast that he made. There was stacks of Saturday Evening Post magazines. I think you saw those. And someone mentioned the classical music that was always playing, KCME, I remember that. Didn't see any rattlesnakes, but
That's good.
Yeah, we got to know it. So we got acquainted over the years. Bridget came out and brought my kids out at once for a visit, and we kept in touch. And then one day she called me, and I guess she had already offered the car to the Hoffman family, their MG. And
Stupid.
Oh.
I couldn't get in it.
I didn't know that at the time, but I'm honored to be here with her friends and her family, because you're all her family, I'm sure. You look at it that way. And to sit here in this environment now, and I don't think, we did a lot of nice things at the Park and Recreation Department, we still do, but I'm not sure we could match what you've been able to do here. The planning, the design, the preservation of what was here. I'm sure Dorothy and I, although I never had the honor or privilege of meeting Larry, getting to know Dorothy, and we kind of hit it off because of her natural love for the land. And of course, being in the parks business, that's what I do. It's just a special place. It is going back in time. We've preserved it. And whatever is down here, I'm sure it's not going to change much. But coming back to the 1950 NGTP, Dorothy called one day and said, Bill, would you like to buy my car? And some time had passed, and it just kind of sudden call. And I thought, yeah, I just said yes. And then the pieces started to come together. That it's the MG that we saw at the gallery. And she said, well, let's talk about it. I'll get it appraised, and we'll go ahead. So I bought it. And it was just just a fortunate thing that came about. Along with the car came a lot of history, and there's an opportunity, I think, for, I'll just point out maybe a couple things. I don't know if you have seen this DVD. It's called Larry Dorothy Heller Yon Valley Circuit 1950. And it's a car rally, road race, how to fry an egg, Yon Valley, Heller's White MGTT, and Palmer Park, Yucca Flats. Have any of you seen this? Well, there's also another one that UCCS or someone has prepared. It's called Larry and Dorothy Heller, the Renaissance Artists of Colorado Springs. Have you seen this?
We have the VHS.
Well, this one. Well, Dorothy gave me a VHS of the first one I mentioned, and I've had.
So I might have that one too.
You have that one, so some of you do.
But I don't think we have that. We don't.
That's not part of what you gave us, is it?
Yeah, I think I gave
Do I
you.
have that one? I don't know.
This is how I got Bill's name, he left us some stuff at the
Yeah.
library.
Right, but if any of you want a copy of this, we can talk about it later and how to get that. I won't take time now, but.
Oh,
this
and
is-
we will make you copies.
Okay,
I mean, this isn't,
Oh,
this
okay.
is, you're helping preserve the history of this. We will help you get this. I mean, that's not an issue.
There's a lot of history here, but in addition,
Yeah.
you might take a look later on before you leave it. What came with the MG? And Bridget and I, our family, feel that at some point this ought to be displayed here at the university in some capacity. But in this little box that she gave me was some memorabilia, and it's up here on display, racing tags from Pikes Peak, and we have just various races that belong to the Sports Car Club of America. And there are a couple photographs here of the car that are in the gallery when I first saw the car. And then plates of the races that they had participated in. But probably one of the most interesting things is, by the way, we haven't really driven the car. I didn't want to take it out and have someone crash into it and ruin a good piece of Colorado Springs history, because it is part of the history of the city. So it's in our garage, and we'll work something out maybe down the line that it could be displayed here in some capacity. But you mentioned the golf clubs. When the flatbed pulled up here and we had the car loaded, and she had given me all this, plus an extra transmission. I have you never know. I have a transmission just in case. Dorothy came out the door and she waved and she said, Bill, there's something that I'm going to give you that goes with the car. So here are the golf clubs.
Wooden shafts.
I just passed one of them around, you can take a look at it. I don't have the car restored, but I restored the golf clubs.
Those are all right-handed, aren't they, Bill?
Yes.
Those are right.
Very cool.
Are they I think they are right.
Those are right-handed.
Let me tell you a story about the golf clubs. Before I decided to get them restored, I talked to some people about golf clubs. They said, you just can't go down in your workshop and start sanding and blasting because you'll ruin them. Because they were all rusted. And if you start using sandpaper on them, you'll just scratch them up. So what do I do? He said, well, there's a place in California. It's amazing, what you don't know about them. There's a place in California that specializes in restoring golf clubs. They've been doing it for 50 years. So I got in touch with them. And sure enough, they knew what they were doing, because these are the original wraps that were on the clubs. And someone said that Larry did
those.
And if you look carefully at the strings, you'll see how well they were done. The shafts are in perfect shape, but the way we took the rust off the club head, they evidently have a cage like the roast peppers. It's full of crushed walnut shells. And they put the metal clubs in this thing, and they crushed walnut shells. Take off the rust without scratching.
Cool.
So they did a beautiful job. There's a driver that was broken, but it is understood. I'll just pass that around. You can take a look at that. So there's a little pocket here. Of course, Richard had to clean up the carrying case.
Is that the original bag?
Are there any golf balls in there?
These kids got them all.
I work in the golf ball, and there's the golf tees.
cheese are there, we had some old cheese.
We didn't want to bother with the cheese.
I saved the
Balls are
cheese.
They're just wood.
Balls are gone.
So Dorothy came out and said, Bill, this goes with the MG. So you can picture this MG going down the road with the golf club sticking
Yeah.
out.
In the back.
Yeah, that's cool.
It
Now,
just,
was Dot left-handed? She was left-handed, wasn't she? Those are Larry's probably.
Those are Larry's, yeah, I think so, they're right-handers.
Dot was left-handed, I think.
well, I don't know what, there was also two MGs, I think. Someone said.
Yes,
both had-
they had to.
Did they?
She had hers and he had his.
Yeah, we were
So
wondering.
this, the white one was hers.
Was Larry had one that actually
You
had
know, if
big
you look at.
Larry has got
straps?
Yeah, I've got.
He's gonna do it.
One of the tags, on this car, one of the tags has LH. So one of the tags on this car has LH, so it must have been this car, Larry Hiller.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but someone said, one of the cars had the stripes over the hood, the racing stripes.
Actually, they were,
Yeah.
I remember that. I don't know where that car ended up, but it actually had big, they were leather
Oh, that's.
straps that
I see.
Held the hood down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
In the trunks.
I'm sorry.
I forgot about those, he did have those straps.
It did have straps.
For when he was racing, right? and-
Exactly,
and
yeah.
So you park the three-wheel on the bottom of it.
Forgot about that.
Well, I just wanted to say again that I think the university has done a tremendous job in preserving this Yon Valley.
Like on the bottom of it.
And if you haven't seen the video, you need to take a look at it because it really gives you the feel for the history of it. And I'm sure that there's gonna be even more coming out in what you're doing tonight. And it's just a great opportunity for us to be part of this and it's a pleasure getting to meet all of you.
Nice.
And I'm sure Dorothy and Larry are both happy and they probably know what's going on down here.
Well, I have another golf story, not about Larry, but about Dottie. Because when I retired from Western Horseman in 1989, she knew that I was retired and Larry retired the next year, and he was playing golf with your HP retirees maybe 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
So she walked up the dirt road one day, because she'd always come up and go over to their property there that we just called the greenhouse property. And she come over and knocked on the door one day and she said, Pat, she said, would you like to come down to the house and just hit some golf balls? Well, yeah, I know how to hit one. But she had taken golf lessons because she started when we were meandering down the old driveway. She said, I can remember when Larry used to go play golf, and when he'd come home, I knew he went to the 19th hole because he smelled of liquor. So she said, I just decided I wanted to be part of this. So they were members out at the Woodmore Golf Course, and so she started playing golf with him. But she just thought maybe I should just come down there and get some golf balls with her, and I brought that little thing that's on the other side of the fireplace. That is also, has Larry Hiller's name on it, but it's a golf ball retriever, that little
Yeah.
thing down there.
Shake, yeah, shake.
So here we are down here someplace, and we're hitting balls this way up into the bluffs, and I couldn't begin to match her length, but it wasn't about that with her. It was just about, hey, I hope that you're okay, that your husband's retired. And she didn't know, I had a really good friend, her husband was publisher of Western Horseman at the time, Joe Spencer Clark. And Joe told me one time, she said, Pat, I married my husband for breakfast and dinner, but not for lunch. And I had that same feeling, you know, I was happy Larry was on the golf course. But it was just such a precious moment to share with Dottie.
Did they play Patty Jewett?
No,
I don't.
well, he
these
played
two-
some, I think, at Woodmore?
They were members at the Woodmore.
Woodmore, I think, yeah. They used to play down there though. I never played with them. They used to play down there. That was the only course we had out here then.
Well, in the video, there isn't anything about golf. So, I mean, I'm sure it was important to them, but it was not, the interesting thing was, we couldn't do it today, but these MGs are racing around Yucca Flats and Palmer Park, about a dozen of them. Very interesting, I'm sure some of you have seen that.
Wow.
That'd be worth seeing.
I have something to add. She used to call Jim and ask if she could stop by with her little Volkswagen Bug. And she'd say, would you look under the hood, or I guess it was in the back, and see what's the matter with this? And he'd look and he'd say, well, I think it's such and such. And she said, well, I'm taking it to the mechanic and I just wanted him to know that I know something. So she would have Jim tell her what he thought it was, so that they would think she wasn't so dumb about it.
Well, I just wanted to let you know, it wasn't the boys that just went running around this place. I'm just a few years older than these guys, these kids. I'm just a few years older. But it was my chum, Cindy Riley. Oh, we were like this. I mean,
Gotta tell them who you are first.
Lori Appman. I'm sorry, I thought I did. I mentioned Cindy Riley, but as I look out, this is wonderful. To look out and see this view of the mountain that we know like the back of our hands. The way we used to just climb it, I mean, it was just like we'd be up there and hiking around and just going down this road. Now we used to, I enjoyed what you said, David, as far as playing kick that can. I mean, we weren't kids in front of a TV set, videos, you know, all what kids do now. But we were always outside. I mean, this was and you know, so blessed to have the neighbors. We grew up. This was a community, and we all loved each other. We all supported each other, and you know, the parents, other parents would always watch out for all the other kids, and you know, it didn't matter. They just saw us as their own. Mm-hmm. And just all the holidays, I remember always doing Halloween parties up at the Riley's place, you know, practically up there halfway up this hill, and then just going off and coming down here and coming down the dirt road. I don't know if this dirt road is still here that went up to Eagle Rock. Mm-hmm. It is, and we didn't adhere to any no trespassing sign either, so we were kind of like you guys, but we would go trumping down. We wouldn't say, well, maybe we should go sneak around the scrub oak and try and get up this hill, because we were always down here. We'd go by, and Dot would be out in the garden. We would just, he was up there doing his golfing, and he never said, girls. No, he just looked down, maybe there was a 4. Might have been a 4.
He liked the girls.
We had our hiking sticks, and he goes, there goes a couple of good girls down there. They're not stealing mine.
Well, did he have the siren going off when all you kids were little, or was that later?
That was later.
That's later, I don't remember a sign.
That was great, and Dave Atton had their motorbikes down here.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what they had the most.
See, they gave us the bad name.
Yeah.
Those are our older brothers.
We heard the siren.
You heard the sign.
Sure he did.
But speaking of rattlesnakes, I mean, Cindy and I would be climbing back here, and we'd go even through, you know, we'd go by and see what she was growing there in the little garden. I mean, it was a garden, right? Vegetables and all. Mm-hmm. And, well, we didn't care. We'd go, we probably came in the house and had some lemonade and was on our way without them even knowing. I don't, you know, I'm just kidding. But anyway, we'd be up here, and one time I did have a hiking accident. Boy, I was young. I was probably in 4th grade, maybe even younger. You know what? How old Cindy and I were? Cindy wasn't her. We were going up a little cliff over here to get to the top shelf. It wasn't the top of the hill, but I was climbing up. Cindy climbed up first and was up there. Come on, hurry! I want to get hiking. And I was climbing up, and I grabbed onto a boulder that was loose, and it was a big one. From what I remember, my little body, I remember a big boulder coming down and somehow crushed this finger. I don't know how it did this finger and my thumb.
Yeah.
Now, how could that be? I mean, I remember doing this, and I remember kind of it just, you know, going to the back of me, but I remember looking down, and it was just cracked. I go, oh no. And I just started screaming, and Cindy's running around on top. She couldn't get down. So I took off across the field, and Dot was out in her garden, and she just threw it down. And I remember barbed wire fence being between, you know, us and her. And I think that thing was probably 10 feet high and I jumped it.
Yeah.
I jumped right over that thing. I don't know how I got over it so quickly, but I did. And she just went to action. And my folks, I think you were out of town, Dad, but everyone came down. I think she threw Bill in the car and Bonnie, and they all came down. But you know, she was there. They were always there for us, and they knew we were in this area. They knew we were hiking and all. But speaking of rattlesnakes, Cindy and I were up there in Eagle Rock. I never called it Pulpit Rock.
Yeah.
It's all, and it still is Eagle Rock to me.
Eagle
Whenever I'm
Rock.
driving down the road, I'm showing whoever I'm driving, yep, there's Eagle Rock, and you know, that's where I grew up, and they're all looking, in that Pulpit Rock? I said, no, that's Eagle Rock. Get it right. And I still look up here, and you know, that's just looking at this view and thinking that there could have been a little highway going through here, and you know, development and all. Yeah, how sad. And yet this place has pretty much, there's probably, these boys used to go down behind our house and look for arrowheads.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
come up with, and then the petrified trees up there on the top. We used to go up
Bonnie, you
there.
found which one?
I remember.
Petrified trunks up there.
Trunks.
Yeah.
And they're still there.
Somewhere.
I have a
cool.
question about Larry. Some of you may knew him. You know, he was a very flamboyant individual, and I pictured him doing all these, he's a mechanic and a golfer and a painter and artist, musician, actor, all these things that he was. Was he a flyer? I pictured him as a Red Baron with a cap and goggles, because.
He had that look,
Does
for
anybody,
sure.
did he fly?
I never knew that.
I never heard of
But he could've.
Yeah.
I had that feeling like he could've.
Okay, but no one knows for sure.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
I mean, they built planes right down here, and so
Yeah, and,
that's part of the history of this area.
yeah.
And do any of you know, he was in, after the aviation part was before he came, is that correct?
The
Would that be
the
right?
landing strip down there,
Yes.
yeah.
That was called Eagle Rock, wasn't it?
Eagle Rock, the name of the
When
plane. In
did they
fact,
close that down?
there's one up in Denver in the United, the B
The
concourse.
strip was there, that's, I guess.
They didn't make very many of them. But I don't, that wasn't here when we were here
I
at
don't
all.
remember that.
So that was earlier.
Yeah, that was the 30s, wasn't it?
Okay.
Probably
All right.
in the 30s, because they only made about 5 of those, I think. They all crashed.
Before you were born.
Before I-
But you know, you put your finger on something. I could tell, how many people have you met in your lifetime who not only are really good painters and sculptors, but have built their own furniture?
Yeah.
And,
do
you
everything.
know, just that right there, just those 3 things is more, and it's an interesting combination.
It's a God-given talent.
You know,
You know, it really
and
is.
he had a lot of them, and
Yeah,
he
a lot.
worked at them. And that's the thing, that's the first thing I thought about him the day I met him was, oh my God, who is this guy?
I mean, with all the skills that he has, it's like Andre Rude,
Yeah.
he picks up an instrument, starts playing, he
Mhm.
speaks 7 languages.
Yep,
I mean,
Exactly.
the talent has to be given by somebody.
Somebody.
You know, I couldn't even, you know, a golf club, I had somebody to California, but this guy could do everything. you
Yeah.
know, And so it's a special talent, and they live in a special place. and that-
very
And
special.
you've all had a good fortune of living here, and we've had the good fortune of being part of it, so it's really been a wonderful experience for us.
He built this all along here.
Yeah,
He didn't
all
have
the
any-
flat iron
I
and
thought so.
everything and the fixtures are
Yeah,
all
you make the
his.
beds and all
Yeah.
And
that.
have come, we took them out to redo them. Yeah,
I was amazed.
they're
I-
all of his.
That's just jaw-dropping to me. I mean, just in the ironwork and all these things, that one person did all those
Yeah.
things, and it wasn't junk. I mean, it was really
No, everything he did was,
a quality, yeah, and a good sense of sort of space and how things fit together and mechanical ability. I find it fascinating.
Now, to that point, you correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, if you look at that fireplace grate, that's constructed out of pieces from HP's old cathode ray tube scraps that you brought.
Oh, really?
Isn't it?
Mesh rings. Larry asked me one time,
Yeah,
do you have any stainless steel over there that I can make something out of? Like a window grid or something. So I brought some down, so well, I got some of these. He says, I'll take all you got. So I brought a basket of them down and he
Made that great.
soldered them together and put them on a fireplace. He had some grates hanging in the window
Up in the,
up to,
greenhouse,
up in the
right?
greenhouse.
That's cool.
He's a pretty creative guy.
He probably he thought of that before you even brought those over there. He knew I was gonna do it.
You know what, do it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Good, Jean. It's kinda like Kimmy, our granddaughter's that way too. She's, makes anything.
And how many things did Larry get rid of? Things that he had made. I don't remember him getting rid of
Nothing.
anything.
Nothing.
Not many.
Maybe that's a real treasure now because
Well,
it's
and
preserved.
that's maybe a nice segue into what happens
That's about
next.
it, yeah.
Because really,
'Cause he just
we
said
are
they can
so
use it, he can't
grateful
focus.
that you would come tonight and begin to share these stories, because if we don't reconstruct this now, it will be impossible in terms of the personal and the interactions, because we have a lot of historical. We are just completing the cataloging of everything that was left to us.
That had to be a
I'm not
job.
saying that was everything,
That had to be a
but
job.
that was the vast majority. I think some of you know, there are a couple of paintings at the tavern at the Broadmoor.
Yes.
The Sangre de Cristo has some. There are a few in private collections in Colorado Springs. And then the remainder of it was left to the university, including the molds for all of the bronzes.
Oh, really?
Now, as soon as we finish getting this completely archived, this is the collection, this is the Saturday Evening Post, the letters, the pictures. It will all be digitized so that there will be an ability to do research and recollection on what this was about. But getting this personal piece of the stories into it doesn't really come in the wonderful artifacts and paintings and collection and the house itself. And that's what this is about. Because I know you know, but I think it's important to know that probably Bill and other conversations of the city inspired Dot in some way to think about creating and preserving this land. But she knew, although obviously she liked Bill, she knew that city property can be condemned and a road can be put through it. Mr. Bennett, who was her attorney, who actually lived on what is now a parking garage, that he wanted to sell his house to us, so we would build a parking garage next to one of our academic buildings on the main campus. But Mr. Bennett helped her understand that because the university's property is in the Colorado Constitution, all of our property becomes part constitutional property. It cannot be condemned. So she deed restricted the property so that a road can't come through it. And we can't accept it if a road could come through it. So she made sure that this would be preserved. And then the parts of the bluffs, the upper parts that were not owned around and behind up to the top, then the trails and open space property acquired that because there is no road. So that truly, the way she structured it, and she talked about, and so did Virginia Trimble, who many of you also knew, talked about preserving this for the neighbors, but also thinking that because a massive housing development would bring an entirely different community, then a university would bring something that was better than houses after houses after houses. And on a given day, some people question that when we have masses of students, running all over the place. But at the same time, I think she was brilliant in her strategy. And Virginia Trimble adopted some of the same strategies in a different way in her gifting of the remainder of the property. So the road that comes in off of Nevada will connect to the new Ants Center for the Arts. And there is nothing, it's going to be down on Nevada and will break ground on the 13th of August. So between this and the performance center, the much larger performance center, I think some of the dream of what she wanted this property to be will be realized. But she wrote about, and it's in the documents that we have, her caring about you as her neighbors. And so that's a special moment to have your personal recollections of them, because she obviously, and I did not, Kathy had the privilege of knowing Dot. I was here on the faculty, but I did not know either of them. And so it's really been a privilege for me to see it, because it has not been state money, as I think all of you know. We've raised the money to do the renovations because there has not been the state money for this. But this is such a wonderful way to bridge history and beauty with the future by helping young people come out and have a different kind of experience and learning and creativity. So we also, as you think about things that would contribute to this, Mary honestly would like to talk with you individually, not to invade your privacy, but additional stories and memories, because if we don't capture it now, there are a few more that we need, other than who could not be here tonight. But literally, this is the way we recreate what this was in a very personal sense of this place. You can't help but sit here tonight and feel like we are truly in their living room. I mean, it feels that way. It feels like we are in an event that they would probably enjoy. So as we come to a close, there is more food. But those of you who don't know me very well, my rule always is no one leaves till the food is gone. No, there's more food and drink. And thank you so much for coming and helping us, because this is the piece that's not easily recollected. We didn't live here, and we didn't experience it, and we did not steal golf balls. No. And all the wonderful memories. So thank you so much, and please feel free to visit, look at what's been brought, and I'm thrilled by that, and also have more food.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Appreciate it.